Hey, Michael, I'm so happy to have you back on my channel. And it's been a couple of months since we did our last talk and you were teaching on meditation. And I know that you're doing a new series called What is Enlightenment? And you've got so much to share from your years of work. So yeah, I guess we can just kind of dive right in. Is there anything that you want to share before we get going?
Well, just that I'm happy to be here and see you again. And it's always a pleasure talking with you.
Oh, thank you. Okay. So let's just jump into the topic of your most recent course. What is enlightenment? And where do you start when you're kind of doing your introduction for people? Where do you take off from?
Yes, well, enlightenment is one of those words like God and grace and reality that everyone you ask has a different definition for it. So with enlightenment, I usually start by asking people what their definition is. And it's all over the map. You know, it's everything from achieving a state of consciousness where you then just are completely and instantly transformed into a being of light, you know, where you're just glowing and everything is wonderful, to an inner only experience, you know, where you have a revelation of light within you. But it has more to do with the world as an illusion and what we can expect. For instance, when we get out of our body, even if it's through physical death, but let's talk about it in terms of while we're here in a body, what happens when our consciousness is completely freed from our physical senses and the physical world that we inhabit. And that would be very much like what some popular movies are talking about, such as The Matrix. You know, this idea that the world is an illusion. And so enlightenment really is having the filters taken away from your eyes and seeing what's really here. And we have to be honest, you know, most of what we see and the way we experience the world is very limited. There's so much of even this plane of reality that we don't see. We don't see electromagnetic waves. We don't see gravity. We don't see all of the whole spectrum of the sun. If we saw all of that, if we saw everything that there is here actually affecting us, like radiation affects us hugely, but we don't see it, right? Imagine even that, if we could see with our physical eyes, if we could see radiation, it would change everything. So it's enlightenment has more to do with, well, let's take Plato's cave, for instance. In Plato's story, people are sitting inside of a cave, chained in such a way that all they can see is the wall in front of them, and people behind them are conducting a puppet show. And the light, the source of the light, is coming from behind them. And one person manages to get out of his chains and travels into the light, into the world of light, and discovers there's a whole nother world, a real world, and that what he's been thinking was real all this time is nothing more than shadows. So that's the general theme. So the idea, and let's call it the experience, is to have that world of illusion, the veil of that be drawn back so that we can actually see what's really going on. And that's kind of difficult to adjust to, because it's almost like a world of a different dimension, you know, say like the fourth dimension, where we're so used to operating in the world of three dimensions, which is like, you know, the horizontal, the vertical, and then the fore and aft. So up and down, side to side, and front and back. those are the three dimensions. That's the three-dimensional world we operate in. But what we find is if we can really kind of tune into that, we travel inward on those axes. We come to the center where there's a 0 point. And that 0 point then becomes like a portal. And we pop through into an entirely new place. And when we do, it's like this field. It's like a field of pure awareness. It's what some people call non-dual reality, non-dual consciousness. And it's intensely alive. It's like awareness itself, but awareness without content. So it's just pure awareness. And to go into that field is completely disorienting. There's no way really to relate to it. But the more we hang out in there, then the more it starts to make sense, and it starts to reorganize our entire being, especially centers in the brain that for the most part are dormant. And just the experience of going within, coming into the center of those lines of force, that has enormous power to awaken us. So what I teach is a method of meditating to do precisely that. It's moving within. It's going within. It's like what Jesus said when he said, when you pray, go into your closet. And I really think that that's where C.S. Lewis got his idea for his Chronicles of Narnia, of the kids going into the wardrobe, because wardrobe is a closet. And C.S. Lewis is, famously a Christian apologist. And it's so much like that, because if you go into a closet, what do? You open the door and you go in, you turn around, you close the door, and then you back into it, right? You back into it. And this is essentially the key to entering into this different dimension, is to back into it. And it's not to look at it, because when you look, you're looking out. But going within, you're looking in. So, but you can't look within, because if you look, you turn around to look, and what's out in front of you turns with you. So you have to get out of your eyes, out of your forehead, and put your consciousness where you want it to be. And this is very, it's subtle, but it's not that hard to do. Because, if you ask somebody where they locate themselves, it's usually right here in the forehead, or it's in their eyes. So if you take your consciousness and you simply take it out of your forehead and put it to the back of your head, just move your consciousness to the back of your head, that immediately your thoughts quiet down. They start to come to a standstill, because this is where all that thinking activity happens. It's right up here in the frontal cortex. You go to the back of the head, and the brain goes, what's happening? Where am I? And so it shuts down the thinking with chatter. Then you're in the back of your head, then move about 3 or 4 inches behind your head. And that takes you into a whole different domain altogether. And as you do that, you begin to realize that that's where you actually are. That your real being, the real part of you, is actually like right immediately behind you. And then once you get accustomed to that, and it's tricky because you always want to turn and look at it, but if you just back into it, then you find that you're in a whole different place. And you begin to realize that all of this, the body and everything that you associate with the body, which is most of our thinking, right? Most of our thinking is body and world oriented, but this is a whole different domain. So that in itself will shut down the thinking, quiet the mind. And when we get really quiet on the inside, then this inner reality starts to open up. So that's essentially what we're doing. And then and the interesting thing is you don't have to do anything. It's kind of like, if you go to the beach and you want to get a suntan, you just lay in the sun. You don't have to do anything. You just lay in the sun. And you can even be thinking about something or just feeling, the breeze or what, or you can be talking to somebody. And the sun's rays you're still bathing in the sun's rays. And that's what this is like. So it relieves us of the effort, the tremendous effort. I've got to quiet my mind, or I've got to see something, or I have to focus on my breathing, or any of these tasks that have been, added on to the process throughout the millennia, when all we have to do is simply go there. See, just go there. And the experience itself is so tangible and so shocking in a way. Shocking in the sense that it's entirely different, that it does it for you. It awakens you for you, which makes it, I'm a pretty lazy guy, and this really appeals to me because I don't, you don't have to count your breaths. You don't have to, visualize any symbols or see the light. You don't have to see anything. All you have to do is be there, just go there. And so the method I teach is how to do that. And then once you pop through, then you don't need me to tell you how to do it, right? Because you have everything you need to get there on your own. So this is not like a guru-disciple relationship. It's so clean of that. And I've been in that relationship several times in my life, and it's not fun. I mean, it helps. For instance, when I was a kid, I was a ski racer, and I had coaches. And a coach is very valuable. So I see myself more as a coach. It's like, okay, here's what you do. And then I help people through the process, but they're doing the work, right? And they don't need me to be something or somebody that they can look up to, because that doesn't work. That just loops you into a whole another category of the physical experience. So this is not about the physical experience. We don't have to bow down in front of anybody or any of that traditional kind of stuff. This is totally within. And it's completely in accordance with what Jesus said. I love the New Testament, and I love the presence of the Christ, which to me is like the ever-present reality. Christ is not Jesus's last name. Jesus was not a Christian. Christ is the ever-present reality of the awareness of the all that infuses everything and lights everything up. So once you have your direct connection, and what Jesus said was the kingdom, what we're talking about really is the kingdom of heaven. That's what that term means. The kingdom of heaven is this consciousness that I'm of the all, of the radiant, pure awareness that which we are in. That's the kingdom of heaven. And Jesus, his whole message is characterized as the good news, right? The gospel, the good news. So the good news is that the kingdom of heaven is at hand. It's right here. You don't have to, like he said, you don't have to go there, go over here, over there. It's right here. It's within you. The kingdom of heaven is within you. That was essentially his entire message. So that's what we do. And he said, don't worship me. You know, the young rich man, you know, the famous parable where he says, good master. And Jesus, you know, he says, why do you call me good? You know, this is not about me. Essentially what he was just saying is, this is not about me. This is about you. You go within, you find God yourself. And that's, so, you know, and I know he said things like, I am the way, but people, you know, took that and said, oh, well, then you are God, right? Well, that's not what he was saying at all. In Eastern terminology, the way is everyone's on the way, right? The way is the path. So what he's saying is, I am the path. What I do, and you will get there. And then he, you know, everything he said then was an instruction on how to find the kingdom of heaven within yourself. You know, and even in the Gospel of Thomas, he said, the kingdom of heaven is spread upon the earth, but men do not see it. So that's what we're looking at when we talk about enlightenment. It's discovering that new land, that new Jerusalem, that new dimension, which is always right within us, but we're so busy looking out here that we do not see it. We're completely ensconced in it, but we don't see it. So that's essentially what I'm trying to, I'm helping people get there through these very simple techniques, which are ages old, and but are highly effective, and so effective that it's surprising. It's actually surprising how easy it is. Of course, once you do it, then things start to change, right? Once you actually start to transform, well, your life just goes to hell. Because shh, don't tell anybody. Because this is the thing they all like to tell you about, right? It's, you know, in the tarot, the zero key.
Yeah, the fool.
The fool.
Let's go there, please.
The idiot. They should call it the idiot. You know, because this guy is about to step off a cliff and he doesn't know it. He's not looking where he's going. He's looking up, but he's going down. What the fool key of the tarot is essentially is the scene of an accident. And so, but the essential message of that is, in order to go up, you must first go down. In order to have what you really own, you have to get rid of the things that you think you own. And by that, I mean your identity, you know, the way you see yourself, that has to go. Your attachments, you know, what you own, and that can be, you know, physical things. It's almost inconsequential what you own. It's how much you're attached to those things. That's the real thing. So it's letting go of your attachments, and especially your ideas of reality, right? Your idea of what reality is, that's got to go. It's like in the Matrix, you know, hang on to your hat because, or Dorothy, because Kansas is going bye-bye. And, and, you know, and the cognitive scientists are saying now that the chief cause of PTSD is having your narrative shattered. It's your understanding of life. The story you tell yourself about yourself in this world, if that gets broken, that's what PTSD is. And so people are really making inroads into how to help those who are trapped in that. And it's a real problem because it changes the brain and everything. It's a real, it's a disease, essentially. Your brain starts to change in people who have PTSD. So what they're doing is they're helping people reconstruct the narrative that they have, so that their fractured sense of self can start to knit itself back together. And then once it does, then they're out of the woods and they can start living a normal life again. So the fool, the idiot, the crazy person does that intentionally. So what we're doing is we're going in and we're intentionally trying to break apart the narrative that we live by and to poke through into a world that is entirely different. So that's the bad news. See, good news. There's always the other side of everything, right? Everything comes with its opposite. The opposite of the good news is the bad news. And you even hear it in like one of the Old Testament prophets. And I only know it through the lyrics of Handel's Messiah, and he will shake the world, right? Like a potter's vessel, it will break into pieces. And this is what it's talking about. We are like a potter's vessel. We're like a clay pot. And when we start going into ourselves, going within, and we tap into that core energy that is the emergence of that field of pure awareness, that is where we come from. You see, we come from there into the world, but we forget about it. We forget about where we come from when we get lost in the world. You see, we've eaten of the tree of the knowledge of opposites, good and evil. So we get lost in the world. So anybody who then intentionally of their own free will rejects the world and backs up into the real world, it's going to shake this whole story we've got going into pieces. That clay vessel that composes our self-identity, what some people call the ego, that's going to fracture and shatter. So, and this is why you hear and you read in so much of the literature of great world teachers, they say that this is the Via Dolorosa. This is the death that you must experience before you can be reborn. And then so much of the spiritual path has been constructed to help people, to support them as they go through that process, because it can be quite, to say it's disorienting is an understatement. So, but that's where a coach, that's why you need a coach to help you go through the process, just to help you hold it together while you make that transition, while you're on the bridge, right? You don't want to hang out on the bridge too long, because the bridge itself is starting to dissolve and break apart. So you want a spiritual coach. It helps a person get across the bridge to the other side and get, firmly established there and stabilized. Part of the spiritual path very much is about stabilization, because otherwise you can just, it's kind of one of the things that, everybody knows, like, who was it that said the mystic swims in the waters that the insane drown in. So a coach teaches a person how to swim in those waters, or like Jesus, how to walk on the water, not sink and drown in it. That's really the meaning. That's the mystical interpretation of that event where Jesus walks on the water. This is what it's talking about. Talking about the waters that mystics can walk on, but insane people drown in. So it's an intentional, the whole spiritual path is the intentional journey into, paths are for journeys, to journey into that unknown territory, but to get there safely and sanely, and then once there, and the path goes both ways, right? So we go into this new reality and we come out. We go there, we come back. We go there, we come back. And because we can't really escape this domain, even when we die, we don't really escape it because we have to come back. It's all about the lessons that we have to learn here. So enlightenment is not an escape. And this is the thing that, if you talk to a fundamentalist Christian, some of them are all about escape. They regard this world as totally broken and totally lost and evil even. So they just want to get out of Dodge, right? And so they invented the rapture. And that's what they want to do. They, beam me up, Scotty, get me the hell out of here. But that's not what the spiritual path is about, because no one gets out of here. We don't get out of here until we're ready to get out of here. So the spiritual path is about hastening that process and to bring heaven to earth. So we're on this path. Path leads to the realization of the parting of the veil and being able to enter into that non-dual state of consciousness, and then come back and learn from that experience and slowly integrate that into our everyday lives. And that has hugely transformational effects. So everything in the person's life starts to change, and the brain starts to awaken these dormant areas within itself. And then you start having experiences of clairvoyance, clairaudience, whatever your particular talent is, because everybody has different abilities in that domain. Those start to open up and your world changes. Everything starts to change. So that's where we're at.
Oh, thank you. Okay, I want to hop on what you were talking about a little bit about the Fool, and also how the Fool, even if someone doesn't know too much about that tarot card, about that archetype, how he relates to the child, the innocent child, and how that relates to what Jesus was saying is you have to be as a child to enter the kingdom. Can we talk a bit about that? How can we do that as adults?
Yeah. Well, the inner child, that's where, the archetypal inner child is the Christ child in Western in Western mythology. It is that which is born of a virgin, and the virgin means pure. So out of pure consciousness emerges this individualized awareness, emerges the individual. And it's talking about us, right? It's not about Jesus, it's about us. So as we, when you ask a child, or when a child asks you, if you're a mother or a father and the child comes up to you and says, where do I come from? Parents usually freak out because they think, oh, here's, the birds and the bees. This is going to be a biology lecture. No, it's not what the child is asking at all. That's irrelevant. It doesn't even have a concept of that. What the child is asking is, where do I come from? Because the child has a sense that he's a streaming reality, that his consciousness or her consciousness is streaming from a place that he can't see. He realizes he's coming out into the world. It's as though the light of a flashlight is asking, where do I come from? You see, because it's coming out of something, but you can't. So the whole thing is about just awakening to that part of the reality of ourselves, that we are a streaming entity. Where are we streaming from? That's the question. That's the who am I question, or what am I? You see? So this sense of the inner child, or this inner innocence, that's the virginal quality, because it's unadulterated. It's unadulterated experience, which points back to what is awareness without content. You see, what is the light of a flashlight if there's nothing for it to illuminate? You see, what is light if there's nothing for light to light up? And you know, the Kabbalists refer to that as the Ein Sof Or, the no limit light. It's the radiant darkness. In outer space, when light propagates through space, space looks black until there's an object that the light hits, and then it lights up. But you can't see light in transit. Light by itself is invisible, and we are essentially light. You know, Jesus said, I am the light of the world. That means you take Jesus and replace you with that. You say, I am the light of the world. The light is invisible. You are invisible until you light up your world. But then the problem then becomes that you identify with what you're seeing. You don't identify with the light that is you, which is what this method that I'm working on is designed to do, is designed to help you get in touch with that part of you. And then, but the more you do that, then the more everything you see, you then become as a little child, because it all looks brand new. You shift immediately into beginner's mind of Zen, because everything you see is like it's brand new. So when we talk about inner child, yeah, I know in psychology that it refers to that innocent part of you that was traumatized. And then that trauma then sets up a dynamic that shapes your entire experience thereafter. And inner child work is like getting in touch with that inner child, loving it, and helping it to sort out that experience and to integrate it, and then grow slowly into an adult. Because most people are frozen at that point of trauma, whatever age they were when that trauma happened, that's where they're frozen. And so inner child work is designed to reintegrate, you know, to put that narrative of self back together so that it can then start to progress. And as people go through that process, they actually start identifying with, you know, their dreams, for instance. If they're stuck at, say, age 10, their dreams, in a lot of their dreams, they will be a 10-year-old. But as they go through that inner child work, their dreams start to change, and then they grow up in their dreams. Their dreams, now they're 14, now they're 16, now they're 20, you know, so you can tell it actually works. But that's a whole different, I mean, that's the inner child work that we do in psychology. But that's all predicated, you see, on this pure innocence. And we have to take the moral connotation off of that. Innocence in this case means purity. Purity means unadulterated. Like if you have a pure color, it's you can identify that on the spectrum as a specific frequency. You know, each color has its specific frequency, and that's like pure red, pure green, pure yellow, pure blue. Those are very definitive. So when we talk about innocence or purity, that's what we're talking about. One thing, one frequency. So, and we all have that, right? Our inner child has that one frequency as it emerges into this world from, you know, back there. We come into the world pure. one thing. And then that one thing then gets, starts impacting, has experiences, and that then sets up kind of a matrix of identity for us. And depending on the most important experiences we have, which a lot of times are traumatic, that shapes the identity into a particular thing. And then, we're off and running at that point. Then the whole process is about understanding what that is and trying to resolve it back into the pure thing, which you can never, you can't put the chicken back in the egg, and even Nicodemus, if you're familiar with the New Testament, he came to Jesus and said, what do I have to do essentially to achieve enlightenment? And the way he put it was, to enter the kingdom of heaven. And Jesus said, you have to be born again. And Nicodemus said, what? I have to climb back into my mother's womb? What are you talking about? And he said, no, you have to reclaim that original you, the original you. That's what you have to find. You have to find the original you. And as you do that, that's what being born again means. So, it's all there in the Christian story. It just has been mangled beyond recognition. It's essentially the same as what all of the other mystical teachers in all the religions, because religions come out of usually out of one person's mystical experience, and then they start teaching, and they teach in a particular way, and it gets a lot, and they're only going to be teaching to their own culture, so their teachings get dressed in the cultural language and the customs and all of the religions that came together to form their culture, get amalgamated into this new religion. That's exactly what happened with Christianity. It comes out of everything.
Hold on one sec. Okay, hopping back on.
Okay. So yeah, the inner child is the inner child work. When approached from a mystical standpoint, is reclaiming the original you, the real you, the part of you that is has yet engaged with the world before it has engaged with the world. And as you do, and we can't extract ourselves from the world because, we're too enmeshed in it. So, the way they say the only way out of here is through here. So the inner child work is designed to integrate and integrate the world, to bring it back into a coherent story, and then integrate that into the pure awareness that we are, so that a new being, an individuated being, can then emerge with a coherent personality and a coherent sense of self that is based in this universal nameless reality that from which we emerge, and from which we are continually streaming into the world. So we're like a river of awareness coming into the world and forming constellations of experiences, which then make up who we are, right? So can't get rid of that. That's like, no one ever does. I mean, there are people, who talk about completely escaping that altogether, but that's not really doable for most people. So, I mean, and I think most of us are still too attracted to the panorama. It's almost like we came into this experience seeking this experience. We're here because we want to be. So, and then we get here and we discover it hurts, life hurts. There's plenty of trauma here, but there's also this enormous opportunity to experience beauty to experience joy, to experience the incredible, to have the experience of actually connecting with another person. That's extraordinary. That's like, because we're always all enfolded in upon ourselves, but through relationship, then that wakes us up and opens up an entirely new world for us to explore. And I think that's essentially what we're doing, is we're in an exploratory mode, spiritually speaking. We're here to explore, and not just to what is. We're not just exploring into what is, we're exploring into what can be. We're always living into a potential. It's like a potter taking a clump of clay, plopping it down on the wheel and saying, show me what you can become. And then with that very physical and very engaged and very, involved process, slowly forms this clump of amorphous substance into something beautiful and something unique. You see, that's what draws us into this experience. So escaping it, being raptured out, or, all of that stuff, that comes from, feeling like, wait a minute, this is way too much. It's too much. I need a break, So that's why, we fear death, but we actually look forward to it, because, we even say rest in peace. And because we intuitively sense that when we die, when this body dies, that we're going to be in a place of peace. We're going to be able to rest from the toil, the labors, from, Sisyphus pushing the rock up the hill. We get to take a break from that, and that can be a wonderful release. And when people get beyond the fear of dying, like in hospice, when a person finally just lets go, there's just this wonderful sense of peace. And so, but that's, we have to learn to get there before we die. One of the mystical sayings is, die before you die. Right? So, and that's essentially what meditation is about. Meditation is a turning away. The word meditation means moving to or towards the center. So we're moving toward the center of ourselves. So we have to back up into that. And then the more we do that, then everything starts to arrange itself accordingly and starts to integrate itself. We don't have to put the pieces together ourselves. That's essentially what psychoanalysis is about, putting the pieces together ourselves. This does it for you. So all we have to do really is go in and then let the higher intelligence that we have, it's, the higher self, we let that take over and start to put the pieces together for us, because we don't have that capacity. This doesn't have that capacity. We can't figure that out. That's where we truly have to let go and let God. And God, in this sense, is our own higher self. That at that level of our being, we are directly connected with the all, with God. Use that word. So our higher self is directly connected with that. They say our soul is always face to face with God. That's just different language for the same thing. So meditation is about letting go. You have to trust. You have to let go and kind of fall into the arms of Christ, as Christians say. You fall into the reality of your higher self, and you trust it, and you let it rearrange your whole composition. You see, and that's essentially what the spiritual path is about, and it's all articulated in the language of the scripture of each and every religion. And when you look at it this way, then then you begin to see the common thread of truth that runs through all of them. So this business of enlightenment really is coming into the realization of the real. It's not what even, you know, the pictures of Jesus or the saints or anybody, you know, Eastern or Western, you know, Eastern saints also are depicted with this halo. And that's real, but it's real in two different ways. It's real in that we actually do emit light. When a person really gets lit up on the inside, it's going to show, and other people with psychic sight or spiritual sight will be able to see it. But it's also a symbol in that you then become like a sun. You become like a source of light. So on that higher level, on that higher plane, you're actually a luminous being. And you get brighter and brighter and brighter. So the picture is both literal and symbolic. So it's symbolic in the sense that it's transcendent. It's not just on this plane, but on the higher planes. So enlightenment really is it's a state of being. It's not something to achieve. It is something, it's a transformation that you fall into. It's not, you can't do it by force of will, although it takes willpower to turn away from the world and to go within. You cannot make this happen by force of will. It happens almost by accident, which again, in the tarot key, the Fool, that is the scene of an accident. He's going to fall off the cliff. He's not doing it intentionally. It happens as a result of his orientation, you know, and what he's done. He's a hobo, essentially. He's left the path of others. He's striking out on his own. He's in the wilderness. He's in unknown territory. But he carries his memories, his experiences in a bag over his shoulder on a pole. And the garment that he wears has all of the symbols of occult knowledge, of which today we would call scientific knowledge, of the way power, force, and energy works. Because we are that. We are that pure awareness that we are is extremely energetic. It is like all power. It is the power of the entire cosmos in one place. So that's what we sense when we start to go within. It's like, oh my God, you know, it's like there's a field that we exist in that is so energetic that it's scary, you know. It's like, that's why, like in Judaism, in the old temple of Jerusalem, they had the outer court, the middle court, and then the inner court. And then there was the Holy of Holies that was the most sacred place. That's where they kept the most sacred objects. And only the high priest could go in there, and only once a year. And, you know, it had such power in there that it was forbidden for anyone but the high priest, who had all of the necessary preparation to do so. They would tie a rope around him in case he died in there. They could pull him out because the energy is extreme, you know. So
I've heard it said, just when you said the energy is extreme, I've heard it said by one teacher that when someone is starting to embody that field, violent chemical reactions happen not only inside them, but in what's going on around them. So maybe just touch a little bit on when someone is willing to surrender and start letting go of attachments and allow whatever cosmic accidents coming their way to come, how they can expect some of those violent reactions to be happening in and around them, and
oh yeah,
that's okay. That's okay. It's great.
Yeah. So there, it happens on two fronts. You know, first we're letting go of attachments, right? But that's only half the equation. You can do that, but it'll take a long time because you never know. You let go and you let go and you let go, and you can get there that way. But it also helps to have a goal. So you have to have something that you aspire to, as well as having, as well as letting go of everything that you already have. So, and that's why in that Fool key, he's looking up. You know, he's looking up into the superconscious. He's aspiring to a universal awareness of all that is. And so that's our aspiration. That's why we, quote unquote, worship God, right? Because God is that concept we have of that universal allness, that ultimate reality. So we aspire to that as we are letting go of what's not that. You see, so it's a two-pronged approach, and it can be one or the other, but you know, it works really well if you do both at the same time. And then as we do that, and the reason I'm bringing this up is because there's the element of commitment, because this guy, the Fool, he's committed. He's left the town. He's struck out on his own. You see, that's where, and everybody who sets off on the spiritual path begins with this feeling that they don't belong. Everything that they know is off somehow. The world that they see is somehow, there's something not right about it. You know, it's like in The Matrix, the movie The Matrix, Neo had this splinter in his mind, this question, this nagging question, what is the Matrix? So everybody who starts off on the spiritual path begins there. That's the entry point. It's like, there's something more that I'm not seeing. What is it? See, that's the impulse. So that's what, that's the commitment part of it. So we commit, and this happens, this is scalable. This happens on every level of our experience. For instance, when we really commit to something, say a new job, and we finally get the interview, you know, the job interview that we really want, and we get up in the morning, we get dressed, everything's great, and we start off for the interview, we get a flat tire. This seems to be a universal constant. Whenever to the degree that we commit to something, whatever the weak link is in the chain of our being, of our self, whatever that weak link is, it's going to break, because commitment puts pressure on that chain. So the weakest part will break. And the beautiful part about this is if you know that, you don't want anything too much, right? Because you know if you do, something's gonna break down, something's gonna happen. So we learn to be a little more subtle with it, so we don't put too much stress on our system. No. So in addition to being a ski racer, I also raced motorcycles when I was a kid. I was totally crazy. And I had this bike that was pretty much a stock, had a stock engine in it. And I wanted to soup it up. So I had in it, which is one component that increases the performance internally of the engine. And it really did. It was like, you know, just an immediate boost in horsepower and all of that. But I only changed the one part. I didn't change the other parts that it interacted with. And so it broke down. There was too much of one thing and not enough of another. So this is where wisdom comes in on the spiritual path. And this is why things like Kundalini yoga, for instance, can be dangerous, because what you're doing is you're dropping in a racing cam into your engine without changing anything else, and something can break. I hope that analogy makes sense. It does to me.
Yes.
So the part of the spiritual path is developing evenly. It's like a soundboard where you've got all these dials. You want to push them all up. You want to keep them going. You don't want one to be up all the way here. It's going to disrupt the whole harmony. So part of the spiritual path is knowing how to advance in an even, balanced way so that nothing breaks and you go insane. See, because what do you go into a mental institution and you've got people who see things that quote unquote aren't there. Maybe they're just seeing too much, and they don't know how to integrate that into life. It's like a person who is on a psychedelic trip who has taken too much, and it's just overwhelming. They get overwhelmed. So many times what we think we regard as insanity is simply somebody who's just overwhelmed. Because the brain normally filters out everything except what's immediately relevant. And if you start kicking down those doors and too much of reality comes in, you can get lost. You can get lost in that. So gurus and spiritual teachers and shamans, especially shamans. I mean, shamans are they take a real direct approach at that. They intentionally dive into that pool of insanity and then hope to survive it. You see, so that's what they're dealing with. You see, and then once they can, they intentionally disassemble themselves. They allow themselves to be fractured, and then they put themselves back together. And because they've done that, they can help other people put themselves back together. They call that soul retrieval, because the soul has been fractured. So they, in essence, they're doing PTSD work. They're helping people reassemble the narrative, the story they have. But because they've been there, they can tweak it so that they not only just put together what was, they put together something new. And here's the born again part of it, where what emerges is new. We are renewed. We are reborn into a new being. This is what the resurrection is. This is life out of death. So we die. The fracturing part is like the potter's vessel that's shattered into pieces. That's the death. But then what comes back into form is something new. It's and greater and more adapted to a higher level of vibration, you might say, so that the shaking is no longer destructive, but then it becomes constructive. So that's what the spiritual path, that's what it's all about. And it's getting in what enlightenment is having our eyes open to the real world. And another word that gets bandied about is the word truth. It's the subject of so many debates, like what is truth? And people argue about that all the time, but they're arguing about it on the level of concept. Like what's the right concept? What are the right words? What's the right idea? And that's not what the word refers to at all. The truth, the word true, refers to what's real. So as our eyes are open to the greater perception of reality, which includes more of what's here, that's the truth that all of the teachers and writers are talking about. And once you get a sense of that yourself, you can recognize who knows that and who doesn't, who's talking from that reality and who's merely talking about it. You see, and that's like when you read somebody like Meister Eckhart, you get immediately that he knows, he's been there. You see, or Eckhart Tolle, or who's that woman who did the work, Byron Katie, she's been there. So we, it's like when Jesus said, everybody who knows the truth hears my voice. So we all, if we've been on the spiritual path for any length of time, we have a sense of that. So when we hear somebody like Katie or Tolle or Eckhart or any of these people, we hear them, we're immediately drawn to them because we hear something. We know that they know because they're resonating with that part of ourselves that knows. And so the spiritual path is really a process of cultivating that and bringing it forward into the world, you see. And then we begin to deal with that and let it show us where to go.
My last
I feel
question,
like we're covering like miles and miles of
we're flying at the speed of light. I can ask you so many questions, but my last question is going to be, when you're talking about the combination of letting go of attachments and ideas, but also having a goal, and then you mentioning Eckhart Tolle and Byron Katie, and these are people that in my mind, I'm just seeing the tarot card, the sun, and you were just sharing about how now the light is coming from that person. So to kind of, maybe you could share a little bit about when a person is kind of at that stage where they are embodying more of the sun energy, and if someone's in a dark place and they are in that being broken apart, what is coming if they keep doing their work?
What's coming?
Yeah, what's coming for them, like as far as tapping into some of that sun energy.
Yeah. Well, this is the benefit of going within, because you have to find your rock, in the storm. It's like you've been tossed overboard and you're in the stormy sea, and you feel like you're going to drown. What you want more than anything is a rock to cling on to. And so that's what meditation is for, is to give you that stable place within. And once it's not that hard to find. It's right here. It's like Jesus said, it's at hand. You can grab it right here, right now, by going within. And that way you can survive the dissolution of the world around you, because it becomes your holy of holies, your sacred spot, your harbor in a storm kind of thing. So that's crucial. You've got to find that, because everybody's life has its ups and downs. When you're up, you want to practice getting to that safe place within yourself, so that when you're in a down cycle, you know where it is and you can go there and you can ride it out. You see, because essentially that's all we're doing, is we're just riding it out. And the problems really arise when we resist the down cycle, and we're clinging on, we're desperately grabbing around out there for things that, and that's where addictions come from. We'll grab onto a drug, or we grab onto sex, or we grab onto anything that will make us feel alive and feel, kind of coherent. But all of those things will fail because they're all external. So part of this method of meditation that I teach is to find that place within yourself, and then to learn how to simply not resist evil, Jesus said, do not resist evil. And being in that down cycle, any word encapsulates it. It's evil, right? I mean, it's a horrible place to be. It's hell. So, but it's always in a cycle. See, we cycle into and out of it. And hopefully those cycles get higher and higher and less until you got just a nice calm surface of the water. But we all dip down into these hellish places where the only thing we can do is ride it out. But we have to have something to hang on to. And that thing that we hang on to is the rock within us. That's why the Apostle Peter was called the rock. And that's just symbolic. It's not him as a person. It's symbolic of, it's the Peter in us. It's that place of solid solidity that we can hold on to as we're going through these really dark places. Because you're not going to fix it. Those dark places, you're not going to fix it. The only thing you can do is ride them out. But if they take you down, then you're lost. Then you can wander and that's the meaning of the underworld. Because you can fall off the bottom of that down cycle and drop into the abyss. And that's a horrible place to be. Then usually somebody has to go down in there and grab you, and pull you back up. But there are people who do that. So anyway, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely. Just one more quick question, actually, talking about going into the underworld. What would you say about, while passing through the underworld, holding your awareness or not letting your light go out, and that speeding up, maybe not speeding up in time, but that allowing a little bit more of a smooth passage?
Say that last part.
Yeah, holding your awareness and not totally numbing out or just like checking out or distracting yourself, holding your awareness, even though it is the underworld, or keeping your light on, and that allowing a little bit more of a smooth passage. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah. Well, it's resistance is what slows you down, right? If you're on a slope of snow and you're sledding down a hill, if you get afraid of the speed, you instinctively put your feet out and you try to slow yourself down. But that just prolongs the agony in this case, so letting go, and this is where the concepts of faith and trust are interchangeable in this context. You trust in the process, so you let go, you don't resist it, you just let it get awful, you let it go and you go through it. But if you're not resisting, it just goes through. But if you're resisting and trying to hang on to some semblance of reality or semblance of safety, then all you're doing is you're trying to stop it and you're just dragging it out, right? So let go, just let go. And this is where devotion, the saints talk about devotional work, and this is really where this comes in, because you surrender in love to the process, and you're looking up in love. This is where the heart really is, comes into its fullness of importance of the love aspect, because the love will save you. But if you're without love, and again, you can't rely on external love. You can't rely on somebody else loving you. You have to create love within yourself. And it's not like, loving yourself, that's a little too trite, and it can be misleading, because, I'm okay, you're okay, or I'm okay just the way I am. No, you're not. You're not okay the way you are. None of us are. If we really believe that, we wouldn't do anything, we wouldn't be on the spiritual path. So we know that there's something more to us, and we aspire to that. But when we open up to it in love, then that saves us. See, that enables us to have trust that enables us to let go, to just fall back into the arms of Christ, as Christians say, and just let the process take place, and not be too upset by the breakdowns that happen in our lives, because they're going to happen. And the more we commit to something, the more drastic they're going to be. So just knowing that, just knowing that helps tremendously. But it's that sense of, oh my God, there's something wrong. I'm going off the rails. I'm going to crash. I'm going to be lost. I'm going to die. All of these things. Knowing that this is all part of the process helps us to let go to the process, and then we just zip right through it. We emerge from it a lot more fast, a lot quicker. So.
Yeah, and another thing that I hear people often say, and I've said it to myself, is when one of these catastrophes happens, what did I do wrong? Where did I go wrong in order for this to happen? But no, this is just part of it. It's no guilty.
Yeah, I mean, there's obvious things. Yeah, there's some things you did wrong, and these can be triggered by just simply bad action, or being stupid or irresponsible. All of those things will create problems in our lives, but those are kind of a different order. What we're talking about is the things we have no control of, things that simply seem to break down of their own. Like getting a flat tire, you can have a brand new tire and get a flat tire. So that's what we're talking about here. And it's important to distinguish between the two. If things happen because you're doing stupid things, stop doing stupid things, right? Just learn from your own mistakes and learn from the mistakes of other people. Be smart, in other words. But when things, when bad things happen to good people, this is why. It's because you're committed to something greater than your current parameters. And in order for you to realize that greater reality, your current position has to start to break apart so that you can rise. The shell of the egg has to break before you can be born. And knowing that makes all the difference in the world. See, and because it kind of nullifies that idea that something is wrong here. And then you can just start to accept, yeah, okay. I wanted to remodel the kitchen. In order to do that, I had to tear out the old cabinets. That's hell. And what do you do in the meantime, right? You set up a folding table in the living room and that becomes your kitchen. That's hell too. So, but just knowing that makes the hell of that bearable. You see? But if at any point you think, my kitchen's always going to be a folding table in the living room, that can just lead you to depression.
That's like one way to the abyss. Oh, okay. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for all of this. It's really nice. I'm going to put your links in the description. And yeah, what do you got going on right now?
Right now, what I'm doing mostly is I have a daily email called Spirit Briefings, where I touch little aspects of what we've been talking about. I keep it really short, usually 50 words or so. So it's something you can just read, and it's uplifting and it helps you orient your day. And so it's Spirit Briefings, and you can sign up for that. Just click the button on my website, michaelmaciel.com. But I'm also working on a course for meditation, this meditation method, and that will be coming out hopefully soon, but there's a lot of work involved in it. So when that happens, if you're signed up for Spirit Briefings, I will announce it, and you'll know when it's available. So, and I also do coaching too, personal one-on-one coaching. So if anybody's interested in that, you can contact me through my website, and we can have a get to know you phone call.
Okay, great. I'll put your links down there. Thanks again.
All right. Thank you. It's a real pleasure talking with you.